Hi, my name is Laura, and welcome to my podcast, Why the Book Wins, where I compare books with their movie adaptations, and through these discussions, you will hear why 9 times out of 10, the book wins. I'll also share different behind-the-scenes trivia I've discovered in my research, which by learning makes the story all the more interesting. If you love either books, movies, or both, this is the perfect podcast for you. This probably already goes without saying, but there will be spoilers for both the book and the movie in this podcast. So if you plan on reading the book or watching the movie, go do that first, and then come back and listen to this. And now, without further ado, let's get right into it. Hi, thanks for tuning in today. This is actually my third time recording this episode. The first 2 times I felt like I was just kept stumbling over my words, so hopefully it goes better this time around. I am covering Never Let Me Go, which is a novel written by Kazuo Ishiguro, published in 2005. And then the movie Never Let Me Go was directed by Mark Romanek and was released in 2010. And this is yet another topic that is related somehow to Alex Garland. 2 weeks ago, I covered Annihilation, which Garland wrote the script for, and he directed the movie. Then last week, I talked about The Beach, which is a book written by Alex Garland. And then today, Never Let Me Go, Alex Garland wrote the screenplay. So he adapted the novel to the script. And the author, Kazuo Ishiguro, he was born in Japan, but he and his family moved to England when he was a kid. His most famous book, which is also a movie, is Remains of the Day, which I will be covering at some point. I don't know how soon it will be, but at some point I'll be covering that book. And in 2017, he won the Nobel Laureate in Literature, which is a very prestigious award. So that's pretty cool. The synopsis for Never Let Me Go. So the story is narrated by Kathy, and she's a girl who grew up without parents in a boarding school called Hailsham. She also has 2 good friends, Tommy and Ruth. And as they get older, even though Tommy and Kathy seem like the obvious couple, Ruth ends up dating Tommy instead. And at 16, they go from Hailsham to a different living situation. Ruth, Tommy, and Kathy, so all the students leave Hailsham at age 16 and go somewhere else. And Ruth, Tommy, and Kathy go to what are called the cottages. So it's kind of like going from high school to college. And so there's other people there from other schools other than Hailsham. And this is their first time being around kids who aren't from Hailsham, obviously. Ruth and Tommy continue to date while at the cottages. And then eventually things get bitter with Ruth. And so Kathy ends up leaving sooner. And as the story continues, it is revealed that Ruth, Tommy, Kathy, and all the other students at Hailsham, as well as the other people living at places like the cottages, they're all clones. And so they're referred to as students a lot of the time. And so these students exist only to grow to adulthood, when then their organs will be taken and used to save human lives. And when they're in this phase of donating their organs, it's called donating, or their donations. And when a clone ends up dying due to the donations, it's called completing. And students also go through a period being a carer, which is when you look after those doing the donations. A student can't be a carer forever, though. So at some point while they're still young, they stop being a carer and they have to start donating. And donations are taken, I guess, like 1 organ at a time, because there's first donation, second donation, third donation. And most of them end up completing after either the third, it starts being more normal, but some people make it to the 4th. So 3rd or 4th is when the time when they generally end up dying or completing. The cloning, though, isn't really the main focus of the story. It's primarily a romance between Kathy and Tommy. They drift apart around age 18, and Kathy is a really good carer, so she remains a carer for a decade while others her age are donating. And so she's a carer, but Ruth is donating, and she ends up looking after Ruth, who is struggling after her first donation and will most likely die after her second. Before she dies, though, before she does her second donation, she has the 2 of them reunite with Tommy, and when all 3 are together, Ruth apologizes for having kept them apart. She then gives them the address of the woman who had been in charge of Hailsham, who they refer to as Madame, because there's a rumor that 2 students who are truly in love and can prove it, they can get a deferral for 3 years or so. And so Ruth is hoping to fix what she did in the past by now helping them get a deferral now. At this point, Tommy has already had like 3 donations. It's been 2 or 3, maybe just 2. But he's doing really well, unlike Ruth, who is not holding up. But since Tommy is doing really well, they're hoping to get a deferral, and so he doesn't have to do another donation until a few years have passed. So Ruth ends up completing, and afterwards Kathy goes and becomes Tommy's carer. So at this point they start their romance, and then they go to meet with Madame to get a deferral. However, they are told that this was never a thing, and that they just have to continue their lives the way they've already been planned out. The story then ends with Kathy now in her donation phase, and she's writing this book and thinking about Tommy and what they'd had. So my thoughts on the book. This book at times seemed to go slow, but then before I knew it, I was done. So I guess it wasn't as slow as I thought. And I like the writing style, as if you're having a conversation with Kathy and she's telling you about her history with Tommy and Ruth. I really enjoyed that. And it is a sad ending, obviously, because everybody ends up dying and she doesn't get, she gets time with Tommy, but it's not as much as you wish she could have. But I don't know, it's emotional, but it didn't make me cry. So I don't know, people in referencing the book and the movie, I think the movie especially, maybe people talk about how it's so heartbreaking and it's a tearjerker, but I don't know, it didn't make me cry. The story goes in a non-linear direction, and I really like this as well, and enjoyed how things weren't told to us directly. The reader, like the students in the story, are told and not told what's going on with the students and that what they're there for and why they exist. So the truth is slowly revealed to us chapter by chapter. And it said that Hailsham is the best school there was for students, and after some controversy about clones being smarter and better than humans, which wasn't actually happening, but people were worried about it happening. And so because of this, Hailsham and any other nicer facilities like it had to be shut down. And even during Hailsham times, there were other places that treated them poorly. And I don't know if kids at those poorly run places, if they also ended up staying at places like the cottages afterwards, or if they just went straight to being a carer or donating. But if they did go to places like the cottages, there definitely should have been a difference between students that went to Hailsham and other places where they're treated nice versus the students who were treated poorly. So I don't know, it never specifies. But one thing I really liked about this book is that there's a number of things I found relatable. The way Kathy sees the past and has a different perspective on things that happened when she was young. When you're young, you're just so focused on yourself and your circle, your group. And as Kathy mentions, as she gets older, she sees things from the perspective of others and has more empathy for them. And also seeing moments, looking back on moments that you realize now were really crucial, but in the moment you didn't realize it. Even though this book and movie could be considered sci-fi in a way, since it is a dystopian future with clones, I definitely wouldn't say that is the main description. This is a story of friendship, love, and mortality. Also how culture and the things we're raised to believe affect us as we get older. Because when Tommy and Kathy find out they can't defer, it makes people wonder why they don't just run away. But I think it's been ingrained in them what they must do, and so the thought of running away never even occurs to them. To disobey never occurs to them. In an interview with Kazuo Ishiguro, he says that he is fascinated how people accept their fate and don't rebel, and that's why he didn't tell the story of a brave person, people who run away. He told the story of what happens most frequently is people who just accept their fate. And he also said the point he wanted to cover in the book is that you can't escape mortality. So neither can Kathy and Tommy escape their fate, just the way us humans can't escape our fate, which is to ultimately end up dying. And side note, in the book and movie, it says that these genetic developments began in 1951. And this, in real life, is when the HeLa cell was discovered, which revolutionized the science and medical world. And there is a book and movie about the cells called The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks, which is about the woman the cells came from. And it's a fascinating yet really sad story, and one which I will be covering on this podcast. I've already read the book and I watched the movie, but I have someone I want to have on as a guest when I talk about it. So just waiting to coordinate a date to record it. So stay tuned for that because it's a really good story and one I highly recommend. Anyway, on to the movie. So with acting, we have Carey Mulligna, and she is so well cast as Kathy. She's an incredible actress and gives it a wonderful performance. Keira Knightley is Ruth, and she actually decided to be in this movie because she's friends with Carey Mulligna. And she said she had a hard time relating to Ruth's character and like being part of the love triangle. But even so, she does a wonderful job. Andrew Garfield plays Tommy, and he's actually the only one of the cast who isn't British. But I didn't even realize this fact that he was American until the movie was over. And he's wonderful in here, and so I don't remember if he faked an accent or what, but it clearly wasn't distracting because I don't even remember if he had an accent or not, but he's really good. And it made me realize that I should watch more movies with him because, yeah, he's a great actor. Sally Hawkins is in the brief role of Miss Lucy, and I just thought I would mention her here because she was nominated for 2 Oscars. One, which was a little while ago, for a movie called Blue Jasmine. But then again, for just a couple of years ago, she was nominated for a leading actress role in the Best Picture winner, The Shape of Water. On to the differences. The movie follows the storyline pretty much exactly, with just a few small changes. And even the changes that are made didn't change the overall story and what ends up happening. However, there are things that were left out of the book that I do wish would have been left in. And we're going to start with the end here. So when Tommy and Kathy go visit Madame Marie Claude, they discover that she and Miss Emily, so Miss Emily was like the principal of sorts at Hailsham, so she was there every single day. Whereas Madame just showed up like every 3 months just to collect artwork that the students had done, and then she left. Anyway, so they get Madame's address, and they go visit her and find out that Madame and Miss Emily are living together. And while there, they learn that a deferral isn't a thing, and that the reason Madame collected their art pieces was to show the world that they had emotions and should be treated more humanely than clones were being treated up until that point. As she says, "We didn't take away your art because we thought it revealed your souls. We did it to prove you had souls at all." And this line is both in the book and the movie, and it just makes you feel how Tommy and Kathy must feel, realizing how they're seen by the outside world. And then this point is driven home even more in the book, because Kathy mentions that whenever Madame was there, she seemed scared of them the way a person would be scared of spiders. And Miss Emily replies saying, "Marie Claude has given everything for you. She has worked and worked and worked. Make no mistake about it, my child. Marie Claude is on your side and always will be on your side. Is she afraid of you? We're all afraid of you. I myself had to fight back my dread of you almost every single day I was at Hailsham. There were times I'd look down at you all from my study window and I'd feel such revulsion." She stopped, then something in her eyes flashed. "But I was determined not to let such feelings stop me from doing what was right. I fought those feelings and I won." So as if hearing that people thought you didn't have souls and shouldn't be treated to a good upbringing wasn't bad enough, you find out that even those who looked after you were repulsed by you. So, sad. And the movie leaves out this last part about Miss Emily being repulsed by them, and I wish they would have included it. Having said that, though, the scene where they visit Miss Emily and Madame, it is really well done in the movie, and you can just feel their sadness as they discover the truth. Tommy, he's very visibly upset, and you can tell he's just embarrassed about having brought his artwork as he's collecting it off the table. And Kathy is more quietly upset and tearing up, and it's a really powerful scene. So the changes in regards to Ruth. So in the movie, Ruth and Kathy are friends, but they don't seem especially close. Ruth does notice the bond Tommy and Kathy have, and she sees Kathy listening to the song Never Let Me Go. And while listening to it, she's sort of dancing while holding a pillow, and Ruth assumes she must be thinking about Tommy. And then she purposefully gets between the two of them. And then when they're older and go to the cottages, she and Tommy are still together, and after some time, she tells Kathy that she and Tommy were laughing about her looking at dirty magazines, and that Kathy doesn't stand a chance with him because he doesn't see her that way. Which, by the way, there's a part in the book and movie where, there's dirty magazines at the cottages, and Tommy sees Kathy looking at them, but she's just, flicking through it really fast. And Tommy is like, "What are you doing?" But she won't say what she's doing. And so then here in the movie, it appears that Tommy has told Ruth about this, and then they're there laughing about Kathy, and so that feeling of embarrassment and betrayal on Kathy's part. Whereas in the book, Ruth and Kathy were closer friends, and as girls, they would have these late night chats along with some of the other girls they shared a room with. And there's also a storyline where Ruth claims to have been given a gift by one of the teachers, which they call the teacher's guardians. And Kathy finds out that Ruth bought the item for herself and it wasn't a gift, so she's lying. She confronts Ruth about this, and then later when a girl asks Ruth about it, Kathy answers for Ruth and claims that it was given as a gift. So she doesn't want Ruth to be embarrassed. And she can see where Ruth is coming from, because they all wish they had that parent relationship and that a guardian would take special interest and show favoritism. And after this, Ruth is grateful and she tries to find a way to make it up to Kathy. And earlier in the book, Kathy buys herself a cassette tape, the one by Judy Bridgewater, and then later it's lost. And so Ruth tries really hard to find it, but she never is able to find it. And she's asking all the other fellow students to help her look, but they don't know what happened. And so in the end, Ruth gets her a different cassette to replace that one. And then even when they're at the cottages, even though Ruth can be annoying during the day, every day at nighttime, they sit together drinking tea and have these personal conversations like they did when they were at Hailsham. And in the book, Tommy shows Ruth and then Kathy his animal drawings while they're there at the cottages. And then when she and Ruth are having one of these late night conversations, they're joking about a guy Kathy had been dating, and they're just in one of those laughing moods you get in sometimes. And somehow the conversation moves to Tommy's animals, and they start poking fun at them and laughing. Later, like the next day or next few days or something, Kathy sees Tommy and Ruth talking, and she goes up to them, and Kathy asks what they had been talking about, and Ruth says how Tommy was telling her about his gallery theory and the reason he's been working on his animal drawings. And so he thinks that the reason they collected art pieces for the gallery when they were younger was in order to see their souls, as said above. And he thought that they needed to see their souls so that when they came back as adults claiming to be in love, they would use this artwork like to judge their character and see if they were being honest about it. But Tommy wasn't very creative, and so none of his artwork ever made it into the gallery. So now he's drawing to make up for it so that he can show it to Madame and try to get a deferral or something. But so he had already told Ruth about this theory, he had already told Kathy about this theory, and now he's telling Ruth, and Ruth is just being really sarcastic and rude about it, which, assuming it's because she's jealous that she was told after Kathy. And then she says that she and Kathy were laughing about his animals and that they're rubbish and he's dumb to be even trying. And Kathy is just surprised that Ruth has said this, and she doesn't even try to defend herself. And later, Ruth comes into Kathy's room and she says how, she admits that she and Tommy won't last, but that he's not interested in Kathy despite what she might think, because he doesn't like girls who have slept around. Which, by the way, in the book, Kathy dates other guys and has sex with a number of guys. Whereas in the movie, she seems too hung up on Tommy to date or have sex with anyone else. The book also clarifies that the clones have been made to be sterile, so they can't be getting pregnant. Anyway, so Ruth basically insinuates that she's, sleeping around too much, and so Tommy, isn't interested in her. So both the book and the movie have the scene where Ruth makes the rude comments to Kathy, but it happens a bit differently, as I explained. The movie, we feel that embarrassment and betrayal from having been told that two people that are closest to you were laughing about you behind your back. But in the book, Kathy is called out for having laughed at Tommy's drawings. And she had sincerely been impressed with his work. And so it's still a betrayal on Ruth's part in both the book and the movie, ultimately. And on to the title of the book. So, Never Let Me Go. In the book, Kathy finds a cassette tape by an old singer named Judy Bridgewater, who, by the way, is a fictitious singer that Ishiguro created for the book. I looked her up and she doesn't exist. But anyway, Kathy will listen to one specific song titled Never Let Me Go on repeat. And one day she was alone in her room and it was playing, and she held a pillow to her chest, imagining it was a baby. The song says something like, "Baby, never let me go," and Kathy imagines the woman is talking about a literal baby, not a lover. So she's imagining the pillow as a baby, and she's holding onto it as she dances to the music. She then turns and sees that Madame is looking at her through the door, which is ajar, and she's crying. Later, when Kathy and Tommy are talking to Madame, Kathy asks her about this, and she tells Madame that she had been imagining herself holding a baby, and asks what Madame had thought and why she was crying. Madame responds, "When I watched you dancing that day, I saw something else. I saw a new world coming rapidly. More scientific, efficient, yes. More cures for the old sicknesses, very good. But a harsh, cruel world. And I saw a little girl, her eyes tightly closed, holding to her breast the old kind of world, one that she knew in her heart could not remain. And she was holding it and pleading never to let her go. That is what I saw. It wasn't you, really, what you were doing, I know that. but I saw you and it broke my heart and I have never forgotten. And in the book, this tape, as I talked about earlier, eventually gets lost or stolen. And then later, when they're older, they go to Norfolk and they're wandering around different stores and Tommy is in the music section. And then after Ruth is upset about the woman not being her possible, which a possible is like the human version of who your genetics were based on. And so they think they see the woman whose genetics Ruth is based on. So they go to Norfolk, but it turns out not to be her. And in the book, Ruth and the other two, they end up going to visit some guy who had used to live at the cottages. So Kathy and Tommy are left alone. And Tommy tells her that he was trying to find the tape she had lost, the Judy Bridgewater tape. And so the two of them go to like antique and thrift stores, and eventually they do find the tape again. And this is just a special moment between them. And during this trip is when Kathy confides in Tommy that the reason she was looking at the dirty magazines is to see if any of the women in it are her possible. In the movie, though, it's years later and she and Tommy are reminiscing, and he says that he knew she was looking for her possible. The movie, as I said, doesn't have the scene where Madame sees Kathy and cries. Instead, it is Ruth who sees her. And the tape was also given to her by Tommy in the movie, and it's never lost and refound the way it is in the book. So a few smaller changes. So one is the way Kathy would talk to Tommy in the book when they're young, as well as when they're older. She kind of talks down to him a lot, like as if he isn't very bright. And I got annoyed with this, especially when they're older and dating and like calling him stupid and stuff. Like, come on, Kathy, don't be treating him like this. You guys aren't kids anymore. And so I like that the movie didn't have that. And the movie says people can choose whether or not to be a carer before they start donations. But in the book, all students were carers for at least a little bit before donating. Kathy was such a good carer, so she remained one longer than most. She also had heard about Ruth's donation not going well. And then one day she ran into another girl she had known at Hailsham, and she brought up Ruth. She suggested that Kathy should request to be Ruth's carer, so she does. And that's how they end up reconnecting, which is shown in both the book and movie. But in the movie, the reason, or like how she finds out about Ruth is just she's at a hospital and she sees Ruth's name on the screen. And so she talks to the nurse. And so she stays Ruth's carer up until Ruth completes. And so from the time Ruth apologizes and gives them Madame's number to the time Ruth dies is a whole year. So she remains Ruth's carer for that whole year. And then when Ruth completes, she goes and becomes Tommy's carer and they start their romance. So she waited a whole year in between. Whereas in the movie, as soon as Ruth makes her apology, it appears that it's like right away she becomes Tommy's carer. And Ruth is still alive, although she does end up dying. And then changes with Miss Lucy. So in the movie, Miss Lucy is a new teacher, and she tells Tommy one day that it's okay, he isn't creative. And Kathy had seen them talking, so she goes and asks Miss Lucy what it was she had told Tommy. And so Miss Lucy tells her what she had told him. Then one day, seemingly out of the blue, she tells them in a straightforward manner what the point is to their lives. And then soon after that, she's fired. Whereas in the book, Miss Lucy was an existing teacher. She does tell Tommy that it's okay, he's not creative. But Tommy is the one who then tells Kathy what she had told him. And they both think it's very weird that she said this because at Hailsham, being creative and artistic is a very big thing. When she makes her speech to them, they're waiting for it to stop raining so that they can play soccer or something. And the kids are just being loud and talking. And she interrupts them and says that she couldn't help but overhear two boys saying that they wanted to be actors when they grew up. And she feels it's unfair that they don't fully comprehend what they were made to do. And so she gives the same speech as is given in the movie. And talk of what Miss Lucy says gets around fast, and as Kathy's reflecting in the book, it says, "It's hard to say clearly what sort of impact Miss Lucy's outburst at the pavilion made. Word got around fast enough, but the talk mostly focused on Miss Lucy herself rather than on what she'd been trying to tell us. Some students thought she'd lost her marbles for a moment, others that she'd been asked to say what she had by Miss Emily and the other guardians. There were even some who actually had been there who thought Miss Lucy had been telling us off for being too rowdy on the veranda. But as I say, there was surprisingly little discussion about what she said. If it did come up, people tended to say, well, so what? We already knew all that. But that had been Miss Lucy's point exactly. We'd been told and not told, as she put it. A few years ago, when Tommy and I were going over it again, and I reminded him of Miss Lucy's told and not told idea, he came up with a theory. Tommy thought it possible the Guardians had, throughout all our years at Hailsham, timed very carefully and deliberately everything they told us, so that we were always just too young to understand properly the latest piece of information. But of course we take it in at some level, so before long all this stuff was in our heads without us ever having examined it properly. So they're told at a young age about donations, and so even though they may not fully comprehend it, it's something they're used to hearing. I don't think any of them fully comprehend it until it's time to separate from those you've grown to love and you start slowly dying. So, told and not told. So the book or the movie, I remember reading a book when I was younger about a boy who was a clone, and it had this similar thing where the boy had emotions just like a human, but he was still seen as less than. And then later in high school or junior high, whenever it was, I remember learning about how a sheep had been cloned, and I just found it very disturbing. The reality of cloning just seems wrong to me, and people are just so desperate to live longer, they're willing to do inhumane things, and I think cloning humans is inhumane. It's not natural, and it just leads to social dilemmas as shown in this book and movie. And as I said, the cloning itself isn't the center of the movie, but still it's bringing those things to light, kind of. The movie was more emotional than the book, especially with Kathy seeming to be much more hung up on Tommy, as I said. In the book, you knew they belonged together, and I felt bad for her, but she handled it really well, and she wasn't quite as sad, I don't think, as she is in the movie. The book also highlighted the bond she had with Ruth. Even at the cottages, Ruth could be fake and trying so hard to impress the older students, but you still liked her because she and Kathy still had that special bond. Although Ruth ends up betraying Kathy in both. The movie definitely did make Ruth more unlikable, though. But I like how both show Ruth maturing and regretting the selfish things she did in her youth, and I found this very relatable. I never kept two people apart the way Ruth did, but I know when I was younger I did stuff I now regret, and everyone wants redemption and forgiveness from those they wronged. The movie is very well done, and it follows the book closely. It's hard to say which is better, but I would have to say the book. Ruth, like I said, is a bit more likable, and you have the more detailed conversation with Madame and Miss Emily at the end. You also get a better look into their lives as they grew up at Hailsham. And the book was also just more personal, the way Kathy spoke, and is set above the way she reflected on her past in a way that I think pretty much everyone can relate to. I don't see myself rereading the book or rewatching the movie anytime soon. Not because I don't like them. Yeah, because they're both excellent. It's just a story I won't be in a rush to reread. The sci-fi aspect certainly is not what will stick with me the most as I look back on it. And this is what Ishiguro intended. He didn't intend the cloning to be the focus. And the cloning and the sci-fi part of the story was simply a vessel in which to move the heart of the story, the heart being relationships and feeling like we don't have as much time as we wish we could with those we love, and also feeling like we don't have enough time to right the wrongs we have done. So overall, the movie and book are both excellent and wonderful, but I would definitely choose the book. And it's just really well written and relatable, and everything else I said. But thanks for listening this week. I hope you enjoyed this. And if you tune in next Wednesday, I will be covering Slumdog Millionaire, which is based on a book called Q&A. So I will see you next week. Thanks for listening. If you have any comments, questions, or suggestions, head over to my site, whythebookwins.com. You can leave a comment there and I will be sure to reply. You can also find me on Instagram under the same name, Why the Book Wins, and you can message me there, and don't forget to follow. And also don't forget to subscribe to my podcast and join me next Wednesday for the newest episode of Why the Book Wins.